Well, we know. Can you hear me?
I don't know why.
Can you hear me?
Can you hear me, Em?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
You see that at the bottom is the mic checking?
Yeah,
Is
it's
the
on.
it's open?
Mm-hmm.
You sure?
Positive
Do you need
until.
Lamont to come look?
Yeah. Babe, can you come look while I'm not in?
Hey, can y'all hear me? Y'all can't hear me? So both y'all come out and come back in. Yesterday, ladies and gentlemen, we're getting ready for Emleigh Mitchell and Chiara Smith with their mental health segment. We're getting all of the technical specs out of the way. We are good to go here in just a moment. Just a moment. Yes, indeed.
Can you hear me now?
You live? Yes. Can hear
All
you just
right.
fine.
Okay.
Hey.
Hey,
Hey.
all right.
Hey, y'all.
Good to go?
Yeah.
Let's
All
go.
right.
Hey.
I'm out to it. I'm out to it.
Hey, everyone. Good afternoon. We are here. I want to welcome everyone for coming in to want to welcome everyone to Heals, Healing, and Hope. Our podcast today, we have a really good, juicy topic for you all today. Our topic is on toxicity. And we know that there's all forms of toxicity. And we also understand that there are different roots for explaining where toxicity comes from. And so what we are going to do today is explain if toxicity is based on a behavior or if it's based on an actual individual. We're going to be talking about how to resolve it, how do we respond, and how do we identify these particular traits. So, before we get started, Auntie Chiara is going to help us. She's going to share with us some additional information about our and how we will be brought to you on a consistent basis.
Emily. Me too. You know.
We're just experiencing little technical difficulties, nothing major. We'll get that all squared away here in just a moment. And it looks like I'm going to have to stay on the platform. I want these guys to have an opportunity to do this standalone, but I'm not sure why it's acting up the way that it's acting up. But we're going to get it right, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to get it right. Yes, indeed. We are going to get it right, y'all.
I can hear you.
Okay, everybody can hear now?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good stuff.
Should I start
Emily
over?
was, yeah, go ahead and start over. Let everybody know what's going on because Chiara couldn't hear anything that you were talking about.
Okay.
You good?
Oh, okay. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Emleigh and Chiara, and we are here for the podcast segment of Heals, Healing, and Hope. And we got a juicy one for y'all this afternoon. Our topic of discussion is toxicity, and we will be discussing different forms of toxicity, the origin or the root, examining ourselves to find out if we are a contributor to toxicity, how to resolve, how to respond, and how to really identify these particular traits.
All right, but before we get started today, we'd like you to know that this podcast segment will be held the first and third Tuesday of every month, starting in August, starting at 6 p.m. Our next segment for this month will be July 21st at 6 p.m. And we've established a dedicated phone number for live calls and text messages. And additionally, we have an email address for the same purpose. You can remain anonymous. And of course, you can comment on the current streams that you're listening to the podcast on, or you can use the phone number 832-478-8862. And that's 832-478-8862. And the email address is heals, HELS, healing, HEALING, and hope at gmail.com. We're also offering viewers the opportunity to join the show as a guest. If you have a topic that you'd like to discuss or a personal story that you'd like to share around mental health, around a topic that you think is beneficial, please reach out to us and give us ideas. We want the show to be like a roundtable discussion, as interactive as possible. And of course, we're on all media platforms, and we'll filter through live on the show, answer questions in real time. And that happens as well on the phone calls. If you call in, you don't have to say who you are, but you can speak in real time to us or text message us. Also streaming on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, LinkedIn, and Kick.
All right, y'all. So what we would like to do is make sure that we are all speaking from the same definition of what toxicity is, okay? So what exactly is toxicity? We've all heard someone described as toxic, right? But what does that really mean? Are people toxic, or is it the behaviors of that individual that's toxic? And can those behaviors actually be changed? So from a clinical perspective, toxicity is a pattern of behaviors. So there we go right there. It's a pattern of behaviors that consistently harm another person's emotional, psychological, physical, or spiritual well-being. If there's a disagreement between two people that's in a relationship, whether it's work environment or actual intimate relationship, whatever the relationship is, it doesn't mean that an argument is toxic. It just means that there are some disagreements, right? And so toxic is a pattern of behaviors, not someone's identity. And so the situation with people involved, that creates an experience that can have conflict without, again, being toxic. Let's kind of go over some toxic behaviors.
So some toxic behaviors are constant criticism, manipulation, controlling behavior, gaslighting, emotional abuse, chronic disrespect, dishonesty, silent treatment, intimidation, lack of accountability. And there's also unknown toxicity where people might not even realize they are toxic or they're being toxic, just like you might not realize you're being toxic in a relationship, which is why we're trying to call out the behaviors today so that people can identify these in themselves as well as others, in building your relationships. So key points: toxicity is not limited by age, gender, education, income, faith, or faith background. Anyone could be harmed by toxic behavior. Anyone can engage in toxic behavior.
All right. So now that we have an actual foundation, right, of what toxicity is, we want to hear from you guys. Tell us, in your opinion, or describe a time where, well, number one, tell us what you think toxicity is, okay? Put it in the comments and give us some of your examples of what you think toxicity is. And then, where has toxicity shown up in your everyday experiences? So if you would, we'll be checking the chats, and we want for you, number one, again, to tell us what you think toxicity is, and then where has toxicity shown up in your experiences, whether it's through work environment, whether it's in intimate relationships, whether it's whatever, let us know what your experience with toxicity has been.
All right. So we are going to talk to you a little bit about what the clinical versions of toxicity are and where toxicity can exist in any type of relationship. And Emleigh's your guru on this. I'm just going to speak from a personal perspective.
Absolutely. So different types of toxicity, or how who does toxicity involve? We already talked about like intimate partners, right? Romantic relationships, of course, marriages, parent-child relationships actually can show up between a parent and a child. Just actual friendships, girl groups, boy groups, mixed gender groups, it can show up there. Sibling relationships. There have been times where my brother and I have had some toxicity between the two of us, where he would beat me up sometimes. And just playing, but siblings can actually have some toxicity between each other. Workplace relationships. I'm actually experiencing some of that as we speak. Working in a toxic type of environment. Church communities can actually have some toxicity that's involved as well. And then social groups, whatever those social groups that you're involved in, they can actually have some toxicity to them.
So I think it would be great for the audience if you kind of shared a little bit about your workplace toxicity to give people kind of an example of what we mean, rather than just going by obviously you don't have to say names or anything, but just give examples of the toxicity that you've experienced. And I can give a personal account as well.
Absolutely. So Auntie, we have Jonathan Shaw, and he says understanding another person's mental situation.
Mm-hmm.
Deidre Vontour Peters says gaslighting, passive aggressiveness. I like that one. Passive aggressiveness can definitely be a toxic trait that people have. And manipulation. Manipulation is definitely a form of toxicity. Great. These are great. Galen, on any of the other streams, are there any comments that people are describing about toxicity and how it could possibly have shown up for them?
I'm not seeing any other input as of yet, but as you guys are going and flowing, I will let you know.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you, Jonathan and Deidre, for sharing your particular comments about what toxicity is and your experiences and how they may have shown up in relationships that you are a part of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I have a question. Can't hear you, G.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I was asking, did you guys read Miss Peters, Deidre, and Bree Milton's comments?
Oh, Bree, I missed Bree. Sorry about that. She says toxicity to me is any consistent behaviors someone has that is harmful or detrimental to someone else. Perfect. That's it. That's exactly what it is. Yep.
And she
Whether
also,
it's ourselves or whether, we're contributing those things to the relationship or we are experiencing it from someone else. That's really good.
yeah, she
Hmm.
also has on there negative or bad behaviors.
Negative or bad behaviors, absolutely. And as we started at the very beginning, we talked about it's not always, we always think of the individual as being toxic, but it's the patterns of behaviors that a person has that's actually considered to be toxic.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So you want to share some examples, Em, of maybe the workplace uh, toxicity
Yeah,
you've
absolutely.
experienced?
So I'm currently in a situation right now where toxicity has shown up and it's caused me to do some real self-reflection, right? It's caused me to actually evaluate self to see if I was a contributor or was it has it been my behaviors that's contributing to this toxic environment. And as I have shared with different colleagues, bounced it off of my own like peer group or my accountability group, I've come to understand that it maybe there has been some behaviors that I have contributed to because I didn't really understand. But then also through navigating it, I saw that it was the behaviors of some other individuals. And so with that being said, it created a lot of doubt. It created a lot of like this narrative loop for me. And the narrative loop was I was accepting the things that other like these individuals were saying about me. I'm defensive, I'm not open, I'm not willing to work collaboratively. And as we were having this discussion, I asked, can you please give me some examples of how I show up in those particular ways? And if you can't give me an example, then I think that you're projecting. You're projecting. And I was able to give examples of how I was the opposite of, these ways that you described for me. And so again, it created a lot of doubt. And it created a lot of doubt to where it caused some mental health things for me. It caused a lot of mental health things for me where I couldn't sleep. My body was tensing up. I was crying all the time. I was always looking for answers. I'm very into physical health, exercising. So then I saw myself engaging in those type of behaviors a lot more because again, I was searching for answers. I was searching for I was doing the self-evaluation to really try to understand, was I the contributor of this particular, toxic relationship? And again, while there have been times where I contributed, I then understood that the main cause of what I was experiencing was from the other individuals. And so what I have come to understand is that some conversations don't always have to end at a conversation. I've just learned how to shift accordingly.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we talked about that a little bit, how, some people feel like they need a closure to the situation. You're in a toxic situation, but you feel like
Mhm.
you owe, that person a conversation. And it depends on the importance of the person.
Yeah.
Obviously, at workplace, you can shift. It's not that easy to do when it's personal.
Right.
You find yourself stepping back into it because either you hope things will change,
Hmm.
you hope things will shift to a different way, and it's not easy to walk away from a parent or from a sibling or either from a child. We've been taught our entire lives that you don't give up on family,
Right.
and while you don't stop loving family, you
Right.
don't stop, um but you have to protect yourself at some point. And
Hmm.
some people are in relationships where they find themselves needing to disengage for
Hmm.
your own self and for your own mental well-being.
Hmm.
Me, I have had personal toxicities, within family.
Mhm.
and obviously, like we said, we want the show to be very transparent and interactive. So we talk about real things. My toxicity was dealing with a sibling. I had a relationship with my brother right before me, and I was so enamored all my life at his abilities. He could play harmonica, and he would sing around the house and all that stuff, and I loved that person. I would be so excited when he would come
Mhm.
over, to do those things. But at the end of the evening, everything always ended in a very negative way.
Mhm.
And as we got older, we got used to that behavior, so we accepted, and oh, that's just who he is. That's just, but when you get older and you've got your own life situations and circumstances and other weights in your life, your children, your job, you know that stuff, it becomes this all the time, and when it's exacerbated by probably undiagnosed mental illness, or perhaps other abuses, you find yourself deciding, is this worth it? So for me, it was love from a distance. I
Mhm.
love and miss my brother. I struggle with that. I pray for him all the time, but I couldn't deal with him anymore because it became name calling and making up situations that were not true. And so
Yeah.
it was very hard. But people look at you from the outside and they say, well, that's your brother. Yes, it is. And I love him with all my heart, and I will always love him, and I pray for him. But I have to consider my own well-being. And so moving myself out of that lane became important to me. And other people don't understand what you might be going through in a sibling relationship, or in a marriage, or in a friendship, and you get
Mhm.
blamed for, oh, you're able to easily move on, or you can put this in a pocket and walk away from it because you're cold. No. There's days when I wake up and what could I do different? What could I change? How could I mend this?
That
You
self
know,
evaluation. Yeah.
right,
Mhm.
right. But it has to be
Mhm.
a two-way, street. You have to have somebody else on that other side willing to make that change. And my
Absolutely.
therapist told me, you actually, you step away and you see how much that person, you mean to that person. And if they're
Mhm.
willing to change, you can't change another human being, but if they're willing to change because the relationship is important to them, then you can make that effort, and you both can find a way to coexist, find a way to rebuild your relationship in a
Mhm.
healthy way,
Yeah.
which is what our next segment talks about. It talks about, what do healthy relationships look like?
Mhm.
Mutual respect, emotional safety, honest communication, accountability, healthy boundaries. Boundaries is a big part of, toxicity, toxic relationships on both sides, because, you have to set boundaries with toxic people, but you can also set healthy boundaries that
That's it.
allow you to be in that person's life in a way that works for you. But
Mhm.
when you need to step away for your own, well-being, then that's something that you have to do for you. And it doesn't mean you don't love them, and it doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just
Right.
means that your own mental health, so trust is a big part of healthy relationships, and repairing after disagreements,
Mhm.
which is what most of us do in our healthy relationships. We
Mhm.
find a way to mend it, we find a
Mhm.
way to fix it.
Before we go too deep into
Mhm.
that, can I interject something right quick?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Okay, good stuff. We have a slight B 7942 is locked in with us today. Tamara Wavers 2085 is locked in. She's saying hello. Are we live yet? CPT time. You know what I'm saying? That is a little something we have to work on. Definitely. You know what I'm saying? Joe Vaughn 5130 is saying hello. Let's see. And then we're getting into some conversation here. Kelly 98988. I've seen toxicity from my parent. Okay. And B Rich or BB Rich 1019. I lost my job over a toxic manager who is very manipulative. I refuse to be treated that way and got fired after about 11 years of being a really good employee who never got a write-up. That hurt. She did something. He did something. Now I understand the situation, but you did something to get fired. You know what I'm saying? I don't know what.
Don't listen to him.
Yeah, don't listen to me. An example for me was when I said no to doing something that caused me to be punished. I've also experienced being told I do too much by doing my job appropriately because it affected others. You see, I told you did something.
No,
Said no.
that's so true. That's so
Yeah.
true. People are upset with you for doing your job. It's
We're doing the
jealousy
job.
in the
That's right.
workplace.
That's right.
You're doing what you're supposed to do, you know?
Yeah.
And then as the follow-up stating, I became the butt of the jokes for being a do-gooder. So I adjusted my work ethic. So she allowed that negativity to change her behavior, which I don't think is a good thing. You should always strive to be yourself. Yes.
But it's hard. It's really hard to not, because that's your surrounding. And like Emily said, you begin to hear negativity so much that you think, well, maybe I am doing it wrong. Maybe I should be a slacker like everybody else, because I seem to be getting, negativity for doing my job, Deidre said having to set boundaries. Deidre Von Peter said having to set boundaries. You have to set boundaries. It's so hard when the answer is always and has always been, that's how he or she is. That's how they are. Just let it go. In family relationships or in friendships. No, you don't let that go. And you do for a while, but there has to be that, you know what? I can't do this anymore. I can't do this with you anymore.
And that's the culture of some families, right? Regardless of race and things of that nature, but especially, in our own family dynamic, respecting our elders or respecting older family members, that's we hold that in high esteem. And the minute you disrespect or go against some of the family's values and morals, everybody, comes down on you because they see your behavior as the one who's being toxic. You get labeled as the black sheep. You get labeled being the scapegoat. You get labeled as, oh, she's being sassy and she just being grown. No, I'm not. The thing of it is that I disagree with this family pattern and it doesn't sit well with me. And so I'm choosing to be different in this particular situation. I choose to show up differently. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that at all.
Okay. So Precious, let me get through the rest of these. Oh, my bad. Precocious M. I can't even read, right? Precocious M. I struggled learning to forgive my sisters after years of being mistreated. And then I Miss Kelly 8988. I forgave my family, but stepped away because I'm not on this earth to endure their suffering. That's not why God created me. And then, of course, a slight B7942. I agree, K 8988. Why God created us. Okay. And then, no, I did not. I filed an EEO complaint. Okay. I guess she was responding that no, she didn't do anything wrong. And I was just being funny. We know you didn't do anything. Well, of course, we never do anything wrong. We never come to work late. We never. No. You were the best on the job, but you got your ass fired. I'm just saying.
He's our comedic relief. Just FYI, people.
Exactly. Don't take it personally.
Definitely don't take it personally, especially not the loss of a job. You know what I'm saying? I've been there, done that before. It is not fun. It is not fun at all. But that is the all of that I'm saying right now. I'm looking at Kick. I'm just wanting to get all of this out of the way for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Initially, so y'all can sit there and flow with the conversation. And just to add on to what Miss Smith was saying, since she's trying to be politically correct and nice about shit, that's my old alcoholic Uncle Elwood. I'm just letting y'all know.
Man. Oh my God. See, we're not doing that. We're not
I'm
doing
just saying. Oh, am I? All right, never mind. Let me let
Speaking
y'all
of
do y'all
toxic,
thing.
I have another brother that you don't know about. Speaking of toxicity. No, but seriously, people, we are enjoying getting the comments. We are
Yeah,
enjoying. Don't forget the
yeah,
numbers 832-478-8862. Please, you can text that number. You can call that number. We want to hear from you. We're loving what we're getting back so far. This is great. This is really good.
I'll run that graphic for you right quick. And when I come back, can I give my toxic example?
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
We'll let you join our show.
Make sure you call the number. And I'll make this real brief because I don't want to take up too much of your time. But I do remember, and it's just dawning on me that I grew up in a toxic relationship. Yes, I did.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in a toxic relationship. I grew up with a young woman who just thought she was God's gift to the earth.
She was.
I grew up with a young woman who was blessed with everything under the sun. Her dad would just about do anything for her. She couldn't get in trouble for nothing, ladies and gentlemen. I promise you, this is a real story. So she'd pick and pride and beat me up and put Jerry curls in my hair and perm my hair because I had BB shots. I agree, ladies and gentlemen. I had some nappy stuff going on back in the day. But at the same time, I was tortured. And then you get to a breaking point, You get to a point to where you can't take it anymore. I don't know what happened. I think I had a snap. I snapped. My brain, it detached from reality. And for some odd reason, this young lady ended up with a bucket of paint, blue paint, this any kind. I wouldn't give a damn. It could have been red paint. I can't remember. But I stood up for myself. I was empowered enough to take back my power.
You did. You did. And I didn't mess with you no more.
I ain't call no names. I didn't call any names. I didn't call any names. But if you guys think that if there's not any truth to that story, y'all need to ask more questions because somebody on this panel is real toxic or was back in the day.
Who do
back
do
in the
that?
day?
Growing up, I was a mean girl. I was mean, and I think it aside from we were little when that happened, but I really was. I was mean, and I felt like I was toxic. I felt for a long time, and I think I don't know. I can't attribute it to one thing or another growing up, but I have had many moments where I've reflected, and I'm like, God, I was angry or just, mean for no reason, whether it was jealousy or whether it was, just and you become that person, until you wake up and you don't realize, well, girl, the world doesn't revolve around you, and you are, hurting other people in the process, and and it's unfortunate, and I think I've atoned for that, along with the blue paint.
Actually, to tell you the truth, he wasn't mean. I really thought we were just having a good time. Just so happened you just ended up with paint that day. Let me let y'all go.
Yes.
Let's
let me share some stories about your brother being toxic. No,
let's do a quick commercial break right quick, and we'll be right back. Today's conversation on Industry Talk is being brought to you by our platinum sponsor, Tisha's Signature House Blend Seasonal. When you're preparing yourself something to eat, be sure to season your meats with Tisha's Signature House Blend Seasonal. Now, yes, please go right ahead. You're more than welcome to tell all the stories you want. If you can, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you tap in with Ricky Lewis. He did a really nice commercial for Tisha and the House Blend Seasonings as well. But tap into Tisha's House Blend Seasonal. Yes, indeed.
That's right. We put that ish on everything.
We put that ish on everything.
Oh, even on my popcorn. No, I'm just playing. Good.
So actually, that's a good segue into discuss. Oh, you wanted to tell your story. Your top. No. Okay. I was gonna say actually, the childhood trauma is one of the things that we talk about that toxicity comes from. What we normalize as children often becomes what we tolerate or we repeat as adults.
Absolutely. And I talk about that all the time. What happens to you as a child that tends to become our parenting style. And when that becomes our parenting style, but yet we tend to see the consequences of those behaviors in our own kids. And that's not the true reflection of the way that we really want to pattern. Not to say that my mom put us in toxic situations or was toxic at all, but there were some things that I saw the way that she parented that I did want to do differently with my own child. And even in the process of us, adopting, there are even some things, because Riley was my first child. They don't come with a guide, right? But now I get an opportunity. Maybe there are some things that I did wrong with Riley, or didn't want to do because she was my firstborn child. But now I get the opportunity to parent Audrey a little bit differently. And so those particular opportunities have presented themselves for me that I want to do differently as I'm a parent. So some other ways that we tend to, or where the root or where toxicity can come from, we talked about learned family behaviors. Again, as children, we often imitate relationship dynamics that we witnessed growing up. Yelling, emotional shutdown, passive aggressiveness, aggression, violence, and emotional neglect.
Fear, fear. People are afraid of abandonment and rejection, vulnerability, failure. So then, because many toxic behaviors, they are rooted and disguised as anger or control, and we don't even realize that we're doing it. Low self-esteem. We also talked about the unknowing toxicity. When you have a friend or a loved one who you walk in the room and instantly it's like they suck the life out of you because their energy is negative all the time, and it's not that anything is wrong with them, and and if there is, we encourage them to talk, if there's a mental health issue, we encourage them. But from when we're looking from the outside in, and you have somebody that's always woe is me, negative, downtrodden, you tend to avoid that person. You're like, oh my God, I don't feel like this today. I love them and I want to be around them and I want to share things with them. But by the time you're finished expressing your joy and excitement, they've sucked it out of you. And it's a form of toxicity. They don't know it. They don't mean any harm by it. It's not intentional, but it is a form of toxicity,
So some of the comments that are pouring in, and thank you guys for your active participation. Cuddy Kelly 8988 says, I remember having a toxic moment and I went to my AP Mitchell and he spoke the word to me. It helped. It calmed me down. and kept me from being fired.
Mm.
Holly says resentment is also a form of or a root of toxicity as well. And then I Cuddy Kelly 8988, she also says, I raised my first child the way my mom raised me, and it crushed her. I raised the others differently because I realized the hurt and decided I didn't bring my kids to wrath. I love that. And that's a little bit of what I was talking about. You are raised a particular way and you see it's not fitting for the times that we're
Mhm.
currently in, and you choose to want to do something different. And I think that I think that that's a really good, clinical thing to kind of really understand, that when you understand that this isn't working for my children in this current time, you were able to switch gears and really and truly understand, let me parent my child the way that I've learned, and I have an understanding that's a better way of being able to be there and show it for my child.
Mhm. Precious M0307 said, also, though people don't believe it, but there's a condition called oldest child syndrome that affects and contributes to toxicity.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know, I'd love to dive more into that if you want to send us an example, Precious. That would be, or is it precocious? Because Galen got me saying Precious.
Hey,
Anyway,
I'm just a little illiterate. Don't worry, though, just a little bit.
and Christina Moody said, my mom and dad worked. Mom went to school. I wanted to always be present for my kids, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And let's see, she said, with my son, I feel like we had to grow up together. It hurts my
Mm-hmm.
heart, but it turned out fine. You know, me
Mm-hmm.
too. You know, you when you're a young mom and you're
Mm-hmm.
growing alongside of your child, there, you don't even, I look back at some of the stuff that I did and I'm like, Lord help my child. I'm surprised he's still here. But I had a good village and I had a good support system, which was a blessing. But I thought, oh my Lord, if I had done it myself, just the anger and frustration and then having to work and trying to be the best you can be, something falls by the wayside. And
Mm-hmm.
then that gets dumped onto your children who are
Yeah.
angry because of a situation that you're in, your surroundings, putting your children in certain situations that they are too young for, or they don't understand, or they're dealing with adult situations in their children. That also breeds toxicity because they begin to harden. And then from there on, they move into that toxicity space. They take it to school. They become
Mm-hmm.
bullies. They become,
Mm-hmm.
people who are jealous or because they don't have what other children have. And I don't mean things. I mean, what they see, that perfect family dynamic. So we do have to be careful with what our children witness,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and explain those things to them, and hope that and pray that that they move through life differently and not caught up with all of the toxic things. Because as parents, we ruin our children. We really do. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but every parent leaves their child with something that
Something.
they did, with some hurt, some
Mm-hmm.
small trauma. Some people don't even remember it when they get older, and some people do. And it's not that we do it on purpose. It's
Right.
just that, like you said earlier, there's no guide, there's no book. We do what we learned. We did
Mm-hmm.
what might have worked back in the day,
Mm-hmm.
years ago. That doesn't necessarily work now,
Mm-hmm.
and can be very toxic now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It worked when, in the 70s, but it doesn't work in the current century. No, not at all. Not at
And,
all.
especially in our community and speaking from the Black community, sometimes we always hear the statements, just stay strong, don't cry, especially the boys,
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
those are very toxic things to tell someone, to mute your own emotions, handle
Mhm.
it yourself. What stays in the house, what happens here in the house stays in the house. Those are
Yeah.
things that we often hear all the time, and then we take that as factual information. But once we get the light, like once we truly understand that those things or those types of comments can be toxic, not necessarily ill intent, but because it came from what we've learned. And when you know better, you do better, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So,
Jonathan,
go
you want to
ahead.
take a few comments?
Yeah,
There's a few
let's go.
comments before we move on to some healthy things. So Jonathan said that part, people with negative energy can really drag you down. It makes you not want to be around too many people, family or not. It does. And Bree said, my mom would always tell me not to yell at the kids in the morning. My sister always said that, and make sure I get up in enough time so I'm not rushing, because I set the tone for the day for my kids. I realized that she practiced that with us, and I do think it made a huge difference for me as a child and for my children as well. And I laugh because I point that out because my sister did that with her grandkids. She began that with her grandkids. When you're a mom and you're in that situation and you're hustle bustle all day long, you start yelling at the kids, where's your socks, where's your shoes, get your books, blah blah blah, and then they're frazzled and they go to school. But she would always do this. You're what is it, kind, you was smart, you was
Yeah,
important,
yeah.
and
Oh,
she would ask them, and you did that with Riley. You always made Riley do a positive affirmation before she got out of the car. And I
mhm.
think that really helps. Um, the I Cuddy Kelly says, I'm guilty of removing the energy out of the room, but I didn't realize I was the problem. So
Mm.
kudos to you for
Yep.
admitting that, because a lot of us aren't able to admit our toxicity, you know.
Cuddy, I would like for you to share with us, how did you come to the conclusion that
Mhm.
you were the toxic person
Yeah,
displaying those behaviors? Because
yeah.
it's not the person, right? It's the behavior pattern of it.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, just to kind of recap some of the root causes about toxicity and where it comes from.
Mhm.
Remember, the things that we're talking about are really the symptoms.
Yes.
And what I really want to reiterate is, although these are the symptoms that we see and we experience, they all have a root cause of where they come from. That's,
Mhm.
again, that's childhood trauma. We got learned family behaviors, fear, which shows up as anger and control, low self-esteem, and unhealed trauma.
Yeah.
Unhealed trauma is a huge contributor of rooted toxicity.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
So how do we know? This is what Cuddy was just saying. So that was a great segue into what we're getting ready to talk about. Is how do we know if we are the problem?
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
That's a really hard conversation to have,
Mhm.
because it makes the mirror look at you, and you have to be honest with yourself. And we
Mhm.
always say, if multiple or different people in different settings are saying the same thing about your behavior, then it makes you have to pause
Mhm.
and really self-reflect and say, is it really me? Is it
Mhm.
really me that's displaying these types of behaviors? I know when I was in college, I would say that I was a pretty toxic person, and it was because of I would say it was because I was a bully. I had bully type of behaviors. And was it because I was fearful? Was it because maybe, I wanted to be the popular person? Maybe, I think it comes from a lot of different origins. But at the end of the day, I too had to realize that, in that particular space, I was the problem as well. So.
Well, Cuddy Kelly says that my question is, why do we follow the toxic behavior when it didn't work for us? Is it because toxic people are all we see represented as successful? You
Mm.
know, yeah,
Yeah, that's a good question,
it
because
is.
some, just like in the workplace, you see those individuals moving up the ladder of promotion, and those behaviors tend to become the culture of that particular work environment. And now you have to conform to that particular behavior. I have an example of those types of things. At being a social worker, we have ethical values and boards that we have to conform to, right? And all of the people in our environment don't really understand that we have rules and guidelines that we have to follow. And there are times where, you know, providers want us to, they really do want us to like call CPS on a family, but then once you realize their own particular biases, the barriers, because they don't always see the full picture. And as a social worker, we come from a non-biased situation. We have to do a lot of educating. And when we don't do what a provider wants to do, we get labeled as being toxic. We get labeled as not wanting to be collaborative. But at the end of the day, I have a licensure. I have, you know, different things that I have to follow in. Otherwise, I'll get reported on and could possibly have my license, you know, removed. So I totally get your question, and I get where you're coming from about, you know, those types of behaviors and how people can, you know, be successful in a toxic but have those toxic behaviors. Yeah.
Yeah. So how do we know if we're the problem? Do I apologize, or do I explain, or do I defend myself? You know, sometimes people explain away behaviors instead of taking responsibility. You know, can people tell me difficult truths, or do I become angry immediately? Do I listen, or do I prepare my rebuttal? Do people feel emotionally safe around me? Do they love me? Can they disagree with me without me being angry? Can they tell me no? Can they express disappointment? What happens when I don't get my way? Those are some questions I want some of you on the that are listening in the audience to ask yourselves. You know, it doesn't. Yeah, you might know this person loves you, but can they disagree with you? If they have a different opinion from you, how do you respond? You know, are you upset? Do you argue? Do you have to make your point? You know, I'm that person. You know, I'm that person. I mean, I am, and you know, I'm thankful that I have people around me that stop me. But I'm very passionate when I'm speaking on a point. But it doesn't mean I'm right just because I'm passionate or just because I'm loud. You know, and that's a form of toxicity, and I have to check myself sometimes when I do that. You know, just because you're the loudest in the room doesn't make you right. You know, one of the things, do I repeat the same relationship patterns? You know,
That's a good one, Auntie. That's
yeah,
a really good one, because if your relationships continue to end in friction, but you're the common denominator, you got to stop for a minute and realize that I just might be the problem.
yeah, yeah. And we've had that conversation before amongst ourselves. You know, hey, look, this keeps ending this way, so what's going on? You know, what's going on? Stop and ask yourself. So let's
Can
take
I
some
interject?
comments.
Can I interject right quick
Absolutely.
before you take your comment?
Yeah.
You guys have well over 35 people chimed in right now on different platforms.
Hey.
If in fact they would be so kind as to drop where they're chiming in from. We want to know your city. We want to know your place. We want to know your space. Come on, let us know where you're locking in from. Drop it in the comments, and we'll give you a little clip and tell you hello. How about that?
How about that? Thank you for joining us, everybody. I hope that this conversation is, you know, enlightening for you, and that you're getting some really good tips and really identifying that number one, it's not the individual, it's actually the
You know, are we going to any kind of commercial right now, or we continue to take comments? We're
We can
good.
go to we can go to a commercial if you guys want to. That's up to you.
No, no, no. I was just getting ready to read some of our comments here. It looks like Buddy Kelly said, when I looked around and I was the only person in the room, in the car, in the house, when my children and husband became afraid to tell me simple things, I said, wait, God, am I the problem? And he said, yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's some self-reflection.
For real.
That's some real serious self-reflection. Kelly said, so I had to adjust and think about what it was. It was how I said things, what I said. It was not how I said things or what I said. I'm sorry, I lost my spot. Um, I'm very giving, but I would get upset at simplicity. So I had to realize that what is simple for me, and let me see, I think it cut off, might not be simple for someone else. Years ago, and a friend had to tell me, you have to show yourself. Oh, that's a different person. I'm sorry. It's simple for them. So I changed, is what she said, or he said. Precious M0307 said, years ago, oh, that's a second part. There's a second part. I missed your first part, Precious. Hang on. Let me go back and see where that is. I don't see it. Let's see. Here it is. No, it's saying number 2. I was always expected to be the example for my younger siblings. Oh, you're going back to the older sibling situation. I get it. I was always expected to be the example for my 4 younger siblings, but I didn't have an example. So when I feel like I failed, I reacted accordingly, which was not always the best decision. Precious also goes on to say, years ago, and a friend had to tell me, you have to show yourself friendly because not everyone knows that just who you are. I can't read this, which, by the way, did not make it okay.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone knows that. Oh, because everyone just knows who you says that's just who you
Who
are,
you
but that didn't
are.
make it okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have that I used to tell Emily, sometimes you look unapproachable,
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
and it's not that she wasn't, because she was, but she looked unapproachable. So she
Mm-hmm.
looked like people were afraid to say anything to her, and people thought, oh, she's snobby, so sometimes you give off a
Mean.
vibe of toxicity, and you don't really even, you aren't that person, because like Emily said in the beginning, toxicity isn't a person, it's a behavior.
Yeah.
And we can all make that change, we can all make a change. Holly says, I went years putting the blame on everyone else and not accepting accountability for my actions and behavior. I was mean with a major attitude. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
Lord. Until I was landed into a situation where I had to be honest with myself and get help with holding myself accountable for the problems I was causing.
Yeah.
And it changes who you are, and your change is very noted, Holly. I mean, it's very noted. It's noticed. People
Mm-hmm.
notice when you change. People notice when you are not that angry person on the outside, that you portray, and it's
Mm-hmm.
because you're angry within. It's
Mm-hmm.
trauma. It's something that caused you to be that way. We aren't born angry. We aren't born toxic, but life sometimes puts us in situations
Mm-hmm.
where we wind up being toxic. And
Yeah, sometimes it
yeah,
can be a survival skill.
yeah,
It's a survival situation because you've had to be hard because you were exposed to toxic behaviors, and it just
hmm,
caused you to respond in an additional toxic way. And so
hmm,
two people being toxic with one another, it just becomes a volcano.
yeah,
And so
yeah,
it's again those root causes that
hmm,
causes you sometimes to also meet toxicity where it is. And I'm just gonna
hmm,
be toxic with you.
hmm.
Yeah.
Tiffany Lewis said, because I felt my mother showed favoritism to younger siblings, I make a point to check with my kids and make sure they feel like they are treated and feel loved the same and in the same fairness,
Mm, yeah. Yeah.
So, Galen, you want to give out some of those shout outs from these different cities before we get into the next?
I sure will. I've been posting them
Oh, I
in
see
the
that.
in the
Oh yeah.
live. Shout out from B BB Rich 1019 out of Humble, Texas. Um,
Hey.
we
Mhm.
have Precocious 0307 out of Humble, Texas.
Hey.
Tiffany Lewis 3978 out of Manville, Texas.
Hey.
Latoya Landry 7639 out of Houston, Texas.
Let's go, H
Uh,
Town.
Houston in the house. Come on, Dallas, y'all better
um,
get in here.
Clock it.
I cut a Kelly 8988 out of Houston, Texas. Wishbone 8294 out of H Town. Um, I think it's
LaTara
Latara.
Lee. That's that
Chiara
Santa Claus
Lee,
education.
5287 out of Houston, Texas. A
Hey.
slight D7942, Annie from Arlington, Texas, growing and
Hey.
learning. Tisha Lee, 3795, my favorite sofa in Bay St. Louis. Um, uh, Mike, I think is Mike Miller or something. I don't know. Me KK Killer Miller.
Mi-
I don't know.
Mickey Miller. That's
Oh,
Mickey
Mickey. Oh, my
Miller.
bad. Damn, Mickey Miller. Yeah, y'all parents need to learn how to spell. Mickey Miller, from Grand Prairie, Texas.
All
Let's
right.
see, and that's the shout outs so far.
We got
From
Jonathan Shaw from Dallas, Texas. Don't
Jonathan.
leave out
Oh, that's
Dallas.
a, I'm reading on YouTube. Let me go over
Okay.
to Facebook. If you can see the ones on Facebook, go ahead on and shout them out, Key.
Yeah, we got them. You got you got all of them. You got all of them.
Okay,
You
and
got
Jonathan Shaw
yeah.
from H Town, Christina Moody.
Mhm.
She's Hancock County, Bay St. Louis, but I think she's living up in Detroit right now.
Hey.
I'm not sure where Deidre is chiming in from, but Deidre Sosha, she's chiming in. But those guys hadn't put where they're locking in from right now.
And
Yeah,
Bree is from Philly.
and Bree is out of Philly. Yeah, Bree Milton's out of Philly. Yep,
Yeah, yeah.
good stuff.
So I know we've been on here an hour. We'll find a landing space in a minute, but we kind of wanted to talk about some of the maybe some of the positive, things. I enjoyed hearing the stories about people realizing their toxic behaviors and
Mhm.
being honest about the toxicity with family members and even with your children and with your siblings. It takes a lot to be able to bring yourself to that point, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it does. And it causes a self-reflect, just a really hard conversation again with yourself. If you are a person of faith, it means, asking God to really show up and show you who you are,
Yeah.
and not just showing me who I am, but giving me guidance on how to make a pivot and turn from the ways that are contributing to those types of toxic things. We talked about the way that we parent and
Mhm.
seeing how our kids are affected by the way that we parent. um so those are some of my feelings about that.
Yeah. And so I think how do we resolve toxicity in adult relationships? I think we should, talk about that before we end. We don't want to, hold you guys up too much longer, but let's talk about that and then we can find a place to wrap and maybe we have a segment 2 on toxicity if you guys want that, or we can come up, as I said in the beginning, we want to make this a round table. We want everybody's voices to be heard. And even if you comment on any of the platforms or text on the number that we gave you, we will
Mhm.
continue to respond after the show is over. We want to keep this going because we want people to hear. We think, it helps to hear real live stories.
Yeah.
It helps to talk about what you've overcome, what you may be stuck in,
Mhm.
so that other people at the end of the day, it all goes back to mental health. Where
Yeah.
are you in your mental health? you know, and toxicity is a big part of it because it's one of the main things that leads to mental health, you know. So, you know,
Key,
I'm sorry. Yeah.
right quick. The last little thing you're gonna hear from me. You've got Swole Funny out
Hmm.
of Florida. You got Droopy Martinez out of Corpus Christi. You got Terry Cherry out of the DFW area. Bentley Dame, he hadn't left where he's in from, but he's also in the chat as well. Big shout out to everyone that has actually joined us for today. I think that is it on everybody. So you guys have about 35, 40 people up in here today,
Hey,
That's
everybody.
good.
chiming in and listening to the conversation, liking, sharing, and commenting. Awesome job, guys.
Yeah. Don't
Awesome.
forget to tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend.
Yes,
Yeah, we
indeed.
stole it.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah.
how do we resolve toxicity in adult relationships?
Mhm,
You know, some of the things Emily brought to our attention was increased self-awareness. You know,
mhm.
you cannot change what you choose not to acknowledge. You know, what you
Absolutely.
refuse to acknowledge. You know,
Mhm.
talk about ask what patterns keep showing up. What
Yep.
role do I play? You
Mhm.
know, learn healthy communication. Replace accusations with observations. You
Mhm.
know, instead of you never cared about me, try I feel disconnected and I would like more quality time together.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um,
I
go
would
ahead.
like to, I would like to add to the conversation therapy. You
Yeah.
know, therapy is a good way to break toxic cycles because it requires you to open up and talk about some of those root causes and
Hmm.
to be able to be challenged about some of our distorted ways that we think that
Hmm.
are correct, but really and truly, those behaviors are quite toxic.
Hmm.
We talked a little bit about boundaries, right?
Hmm.
And so boundaries can look several different ways. It
Yep.
could just be shifting, it could be
Hmm.
slowly moving away from those types of relationships. It could actually be having a courageous conversation with that particular individual. But
Hmm.
sometimes we have to be careful. Remember, Auntie, we was talking about some people always think that there has to be a closure conversation.
Hmm.
But if that person is a trigger for you, we don't, it doesn't, it may not always end the way that we think is going to end because of
Hmm.
how we have, given that particular narrative or created that particular narrative in our head that we
Hmm.
want it to end this particular way. But if
Yeah.
that person is a trigger for you, sometimes it's just best to just leave it where it is
Hmm.
and walk away from that particular situation. And
Yeah.
not that you're being
Yeah.
passive. It's not
Yeah.
that you're being passive in no cost. It just means that you don't have the capacity for it anymore, and it's
Hmm.
best to walk away
Hmm.
from those particular situations.
Yeah.
I've had to do that quite frequently.
Yeah.
Mm.
And one of the things you told me, you know, when I was dealing with a situation once was to be still for a minute.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, sit and be still, sit in it for a minute and think about it. You know,
Mhm.
there's nothing wrong with sitting for a minute and weighing the pros and cons. Sometimes writing it down, you know, journaling about it, looking at a way, did I do something wrong? You know, and or did they do something wrong? Or the pros and cons of this relationship. Is this relationship good for me? What
Yep.
does it bring me? What's the good in it? You know,
Mhm.
what's the bad in it? You
Mhm.
know, what things have I overlooked? And sometimes requires you to go back and say, I apologize. I'm
Mhm.
sorry. You know, I didn't realize what I was doing in this
Mhm.
relationship. You
Yeah.
know, one of the people commented, you know, I forgive myself. I
Mhm.
forgave my parents. I forgive myself. You know, you can have that self-reflection and say, I want to mend this relationship. I want to change what this relationship looks like
Mhm.
and have a different end result. You
That's
know,
it.
if that person is that important to you and willing to meet you at that point,
Hmm.
you know.
I think emotional intelligence and emotional regulation is really important as well. And what that basically means is that we learn to pause before reacting
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
respond instead of reacting. Is
Mhm.
what I think is a really good point. Another thing that I want to talk about too is there's a grieving process of
Hmm.
letting relationships go. And when
Yes.
you choose, well, not when you choose, but when you go through that grieving process, there's different stages of grieving, and we can always talk about that at another time. But whenever you are grieving particular relationships, it's you have to feel the feeling
Hmm.
and go through that feeling and not be willing to suppress it to the point that you don't want to acknowledge what it is that you're feeling, but just truly be honest about what you're grieving.
Yeah, yeah. That's a
Mhm.
hard thing to do. It's
It is.
hard to do that. And people, people think, like I said, that other people look at you and think you moved on, not
Mhm.
realizing you're going through those steps, the denial, the anger, and the resentment, just the whole situation. And then, once you've gone through those stages,
Mhm.
then the healing begins. But you can't
Mhm.
jump to the end
Yeah.
because you have to feel it. You have to go through
You
it.
have to go through
Yeah,
each particular
yeah.
situation. Yeah, absolutely. And we got to realize that too, that there is a difference between, or you have to, sometimes we wrestle between forgiveness and reconciliation,
Mhm.
and we have to forgive. You can forgive someone without allowing continued access to your life. And
Mhm.
forgiveness releases bitterness, and
Yep.
reconciliation requires trust. It
Mhm.
requires accountability and an actual changed behavior. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep.
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 Yeah. Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. So I think we've discussed a lot
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
We don't want to overwhelm everybody, but we have a lot more to talk about on this subject. Maybe we can do a segment two on this. You let us know if you want us to keep going on this in your comments, in your
Yeah.
text messages. Again, don't forget our phone number. I'll read it to you again, 832-478-8862. And our email address is healshealingandhope@gmail.com. Shout out to Bentley Dame Sr. from New Orleans. We didn't get to call you out earlier. We truly appreciate everybody who's commented, chimed in.
Yeah.
We just want to make this as much of a discussion as possible. We're not here to tell you to walk away from relationships because you've had a disagreement. Because, like Emily said earlier, disagreeing, healthy disagreements, that's normal,
Mhm.
but recognizing what truly is toxic to you, what really is bringing you down, whether it's something you shouldn't be engaged in, or something that that's weighing heavy on you, something that's sucking the life out of you, or
Mhm.
if you're doing that same to somebody else. Therapy is a good place,
Yeah.
to start. We always go back to therapy because that's somebody who's sitting there objectively helping you to understand what your feelings are, where you are in your toxicity, so to speak, and how you can better set yourself up for a healthy well-being
Yeah.
overall.
Absolutely. Don't forget to come back next to Tuesday, July the
July.
21st. We
Yep.
will be back for our next segment, and it will start at 6 o'clock. And then
Hmm.
starting in August, don't forget the first and third Tuesday of the month going forward. That's when you'll be hearing from us on a consistent basis based on our segment, our podcast segment, Heals, Healing, and Hope. So always come back again on the first and third Tuesdays of every month starting in August. But our very next segment is going to be on Tuesday, July the 21st.
And if you have any topics you want us to discuss, and they don't always have to be, a heavy topic, we
Yeah.
want to hear success stories as well. We want to talk about people who have overcome situations, mental health situations, toxicity, grief, or anything positive in your life, promotions, where you are in your life, climbing the corporate ladder, being an entrepreneur, setting yourself up for success in a healthy environment. All those things. We want you. Don't forget, we're on Industry Talk here. I'm repping. If you want to go to gemsit.org and order your gear, show up. One day we'll have a situation where we can show the audience and they can be live as well. We're gonna blow this platform up. But as we wrap everything up, thanks to Big G for hosting us today. And every time we leave, we're gonna leave you with a little snip. And today we're just saying that healing, and hope one step at a time.
That's it.
All right.
Thank you, guys. Have a blessed evening.
All right.
Yes, indeed. You guys enjoyed the show? You guys had a good time today?
Yeah, I think it turned out well.
It turned out fantastic. You still live. You still got a hot mic on. Don't say nothing crazy. I'm just letting you know.
I'm really happy to hear everyone who was able to participate today.
Yes.
They really gave some awesome comments and really helped contribute to the conversation. So I'm really, really excited that everyone showed up like they did.
Awesome. Good stuff. Is Key out? I think Key might have jumped off the live.
Yeah, she's frozen on my end, brother.
Okay. Good stuff. And we're gonna go ahead on and close out. And I appreciate you. And I'll see you guys on the 21st.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Good
the
stuff.
21st at 6 o'clock.
21st at 6 o'clock. Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome program. Great job. Love you.
All right, love you too.